Everyone, my name is Katelyn. I am the Assistant Manager of Education and Conservation here at Ripley's Aquarium of Canada. Thank you for joining us. Today we are going to dive in to our shark tank and watch our sharks getting their lunch. So let's go. So right now I am coming to you from our Dangerous Lagoon exhibit. It is the largest exhibit here at the aquarium. And despite the fact that the aquarium itself is closed to the public, our animal care still continues. We are accredited by the AZA, which is the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, and this means we provide the highest standard in animal care, as well as support for scientific research and conservation and educational programmings. We have about 16,000 animals here at the aquarium, so of course animal care is our highest responsibility and something we are very, very passionate about. The aquarium has been open since October of 2013, and this exhibit has about 3 million liters of salt water. All of the water in the aquarium starts out as municipal City of Toronto tap water, and then we have a special secret recipe of salts that we use in order to make it resemble and mimic salt water that you would find in the ocean. This exhibit is home to many different animals. It is the largest exhibit here at the aquarium, so it makes sense that it has the highest variety of species in it. The sharks that you see in front of you are called sand tiger sharks. These are the largest sharks that we have here at the aquarium. As well, we're probably going to see some sawfish today, maybe a rough-tailed stingray, as well as our 2 turtle friends. We also have nurse sharks and sandbar sharks in this tank, and about 6,000 other smaller varieties of fish, including porkfish, snappers, and several varieties of grunts. Now, I'm actually going to toss it over to my colleague, who is currently up at the top of this tank, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what is happening above us.
Thanks, Katelyn. So I'm joining you from the top of Dangerous Lagoon. So if you were a visitor here at the aquarium recently, you would have stood over on the overlook over here. Our aquarists are all around me here. They've got food ready on long poles, which they're putting down into the water. So the sharks and stingrays and sawfish can grab the food. The sharks all know to look for a target. So they all have a different target that they're moving towards. And they know that that's the food location for their station. And this is also part of some animal enrichment for them. So they are getting some behavioral reinforcement that when they touch the target, they get the food reward. Katelyn, I'm going to toss it back down to you to below.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. So that should give you a bit of information about what is going on above this tank. I am obviously below inside the Dangerous Lagoon tunnel, which has the moving sidewalk on it. So enrichment, to just expand on that, enrichment is something we do with several varieties of species here at the aquarium. Try and get a good shot there. We do this for many different animals because it helps develop trust with those animals, so they get comfortable approaching our aquarium biologists. And that way, should we need them to come close to us, whether it be for a vet checkup, a weighing, or anything like that, it just has this trust so they're not timid and they'll be able to come up to us. It also is a great way to give them a challenge or an environmental stimuli, so it keeps them engaged while they're here at the aquarium. So you can see some of the feeding pools in the water here. Further down, we are feeding some of our smaller species of shark, and they have a Superman symbol that goes in the water. We also do a few other things at the surface of the water to signal these animals that feeding is about to start. Normally, this tank would have a few airlifts that would be producing a current throughout the tank. We shut those airlifts off at 1 o'clock when we start our feed, and we also dim the lights in this exhibit. Both of those are essentially akin to ringing a shark dinner bell, so they know to start to go over to their area of the tank in order to get their food. We go through about 800 pounds of seafood here a week to feed our animals. I should mention that it is all frozen seafood. So these sharks are not being fed any live animals right now. It is all frozen. And because it's frozen, it does lose a touch of nutritional value just during that freezing process, which we supplement by putting vitamins into their food as well. So we want to make sure they're getting the exact same nutritional value as they would get if they were out in the ocean. In general, most of the fish here are fed the same varieties of foods, the same varieties of fish species that would be frozen. We just prepare it in different ways depending on the species that we're going to feed. So by that, I mean a smaller fish species would tend to get their food prepared in smaller pieces, and it's kind of catered to the size of the mouth we're trying to feed. So these bigger sharks obviously get very large pieces of seafood. So in front of you, at the top, you're going to notice a nurse shark, and at the bottom is one of our sandbar sharks. So the nurse sharks are the ones that need to approach that Superman symbol and essentially sit on top of it in order to get their food. Towards the end of the feeding, you'll probably notice them also approach the other feeding locations and try and steal food from the other sharks in the tank. They are the gluttons. We have 15 sharks in total in this tank. We have 3 nurse sharks, 2 sandbar sharks, and then 10 sand tiger sharks, which are the largest species that you'll hopefully see getting food in front of me in a moment. So when the sharks swim by and grab their food, we record which shark has eaten and how much they have been fed. We try and keep track of exactly what they're consuming and when, because we feed all of the animals a percentage of their body weight. For the sand tiger sharks, it's usually between 2 and 3%. So we want to make sure that we know who's getting what, just so they don't get overfed. And if they're not eating as much, it's kind of an indication that we may want to just monitor their feeding behavior. And it might also be an indication that our sharks are entering their breeding season. So there you can see a great shot of one of our sand tiger sharks. The females in this exhibit are almost twice the size of the males. So the larger sharks in here are females, the smaller sharks are males. Male sharks also, if you look at the one that I'm showing you right now, you'll notice behind their pectoral fins, which are the fins at the back, there are 2 little tube-like projections. Those are called claspers, and those are the male reproductive organs of sharks. So females would not have those. So we often get asked why the sharks don't eat the other fish in this tank, why they don't eat their tank mates. It's a great question. Our sharks here are fed 3 times a week. So they're fed Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, which is actually quite a lot for shark species. Out in the open ocean, sharks like these would probably only find food every few weeks. It's not as often as most people think. The ocean is vast, the fish in there are fast, and they have lots of places to hide. So they're kind of hard to find. So it makes sense that they don't find those fish that often. And their metabolism is also very slow. So only feeding once every few weeks is sufficient for these animals. And in regards to this tank, we essentially overfeed them. So by feeding them 3 times a week, we're making sure that their stomachs are full all the time. And if sharks are full, they're not going to waste their energy by chasing around the fish in this tank in order to catch them. This tank is also very intricate. There's lots of places for the smaller fish to hide. So it just doesn't make sense that the sharks would try and kill their tank mates. In addition to that, I suspect they've also gotten used to being spoiled by us. We fillet their fish. We take off any less desirable parts of the food. So essentially, we're giving these sharks kind of a 5-star meal. So they only get the good stuff. Whereas in the wild, sharks would generally go after sick or injured fish, so they're not getting the top-notch seafood that we offer them here. We have about 6,000 other fish in this tank, so you may notice on my left side, we have 2 aquarium biologists up at the top of this tank who are scattering food at the top of the exhibit. We're trying to distract those fish at one side of the tank while we feed the larger predators at the other side of the tank. In addition to scattering food up at the top, we also have what essentially are kind of like an underwater torpedo system, where we will load food into these little tubes and push it out the bottom of the tank on this side as well. So it helps separate the smaller fish from the larger predators that are getting fed at the one side of the exhibit. Now, as we're talking about sharks, I wanted to highlight some of the interesting features that help their lifestyle and help them being adapted to an aquatic environment. So sharks are elasmobranchs, which also includes stingrays and sawfish, some of the other inhabitants of this tank. They have something called Electro Receptors that are at the front of their body, also called ampullae of Lorenzini, if you want to know that fun scientific term. And what this means is they can detect really small electric impulses that are produced by living animals. So for you at home, if you move your arm up and down for me right now, that muscle movement in your body is powered by a tiny electric impulse that tells your muscles to move. Sharks can sense those impulses, which is great for their hunting ability. It allows them to find prey a little bit better. In addition to that, sharks actually don't have any bones in their body. Their entire skeleton is made up of cartilage. So again, at home, if you feel the bridge of your mouth for me, that material that you were feeling is also cartilage. So that is what makes up the skeleton of our sharks. It makes them very agile as well as being very flexible in their environments. And now let's talk about kind of one of the key features you associate with sharks, their teeth. There goes a sandbar shark. Now, the teeth of our sand tiger sharks is obviously designed to shred fish. So they're very sharp. But sharks also tend to lose their teeth very quickly because their teeth don't have a true root like your teeth at home would. So they do fall out all the time. The bottom of this tank is littered with shark teeth. Whereas humans, we only get 2 sets of teeth. So we have our baby teeth as well as our adult teeth. Our sharks are able to constantly replace any teeth they lose. Right now, the sand tiger sharks in this tank have about 5 rows in their mouth. And when they lose 1 row of teeth, they're able to just replace it with the teeth behind it. So they're kind of in this constant conveyor belt situation with regards to their teeth. They just always have new teeth coming in. This also allows them to make sure that their teeth don't get dull and less effective for shredding their prey. Now, it's exactly these types of features that have led to our sharks getting a bit of a bad reputation, as well as the way that they've been portrayed in many films, unfortunately. Our sharks here, we like to refer to as Hollywood sharks because they have lots of teeth, they're very big, they can look a little intimidating, but they are very, very docile animals. We do have to dive into this tank several times a week in order to clean it. And in fact, we also run a guest dive program here where if you're a scuba certified diver, you can take a tour of this tank with some of our dive staff. So it's not as if we don't get in this tank a lot. We're actually in this tank very, very often in order to maintain it. And our sharks, again, are very docile. They don't tend to bother our divers. We do have a specific designated diver who is called a shark tender. And the shark tender's job is basically to act as shark traffic control. So when they are in the tank, they have a piece of PVC pipe that is coated in white and black tape. So it's like a zebra type pattern. And this makes it easy to distinguish by our sharks. And so if sharks are getting too close to our divers, which tends to happen because the sharks in this tank are nocturnal. So during the day when we're in here diving, our sharks are essentially resting or sleeping. They're just not the most alert animals during the day. So they may in fact get a little too close, and our shark tender will just wave that piece of pipe in front of them, and it basically alerts them that they need to change direction. They need to move. We've got divers here, so they need to get out of the way. I do want to highlight that you're also more likely to get crushed by a vending machine than you are to get killed by a shark. So unfortunately, our sharks do have this bad reputation, but it is very, very unfounded. There is our rough-tail stingray going by. In this tank, as well as many of the other tanks in the aquarium, it's actually the smaller fish who are more troublesome to our dive team. And this is because they tend to give our divers unwanted haircuts by biting their hair off. That's very, very common in this tank, as well as our rainbow reef tank, which is our tropical environment. We've got lots of fish in there that just love to nibble on hair. And some of the fish in this tank are used to doing that for other animals in the ocean. One of our turtles, for example, has a little group of porkfish who will follow her around constantly and essentially groom her. They'll remove any parasites on her body. Now, the sand tiger sharks, which are the largest species that we've been talking about, these ones right here are currently listed as vulnerable with the IUCN. This is for a few reasons. One is that they are often caught as accidental bycatch with commercial fishing. Accidental bycatch is anything that fishermen had not originally intended to catch that may get caught up in their fishing nets. This is often many varieties of sharks. That's one reason that our sand tiger sharks are currently listed as vulnerable. The other is that sand tiger sharks have one of the lowest reproductive rates of any shark species. And they also reach maturity at a very late time. It takes them several years in order to reach the point that they are able to reproduce. And I would love to tell you about shark reproduction. We just are coming out of the tail end of shark mating season here at the aquarium. So we're just getting towards the back end of it. It's normally a little bit earlier in early spring, late spring, early summer, pardon me. Now these sand tiger sharks would generally only birth 2 pups at a time, which is very few. And it is done in the most unique way possible, I think. So female sharks have 2 oviducts, which are the female reproductive organs. And within those oviducts, they'll usually produce about 5 eggs in each side, so 10 eggs total. During mating season, in our tank, we generally have a few alpha males who get sort of preferential treatment when it comes to female attention. So a female in this tank may accept multiple partners. So in theory, each egg inside her oviduct could be fertilized by a different male. And as they develop, they take about 9 months to develop. They will actually hatch inside the mother. And then they go through something that is called intrauterine cannibalism. And that means what you think it means. It means that the shark that hatches first inside the mother will actually consume all of its siblings while still in the mother, as well as any eggs that are still developing. So this means that each female shark will only ever birth 2 pups at a time. So that's that low reproductive rate that we were talking about. Here at the aquarium, we actually work with an organization that's called CSARC. And we contribute our behavioral and reproductive data on our sand tiger sharks to them. And what they do is they work with endangered species and they study their reproductive behavior with the end goal of being able to boost populations in the wild. So in order to try and breed lots of animals in captivity with the end goal that we can actually release some of those animals into the wild in order to boost their wild populations. And right on time, here is one of our green sea turtles. This is Chewy. We have 2 green sea turtles here at the aquarium. In addition to Chewy, we have Spot. Spot is probably in the back somewhere. Our turtles actually get fed right after our shark feed, so she's probably in the back. She's a bit of a glutton for food, so we did see her back there earlier, kind of anticipating getting her food. Chewy tends to be a little more active, so she'll probably come back. So I'm just gonna stay here and we'll see if she returns to us. So Chewy was actually named for her amazing ability to chew on anything and everything in this exhibit. I do want to preface this by saying all of the decor that you see in front of you is all fake coral. So it's actually all made from concrete rubber and then painted with some non-toxic paint to give it the nice colors that you see. It's Chewy. And Chewy loves to try and rip it apart in her spare time. She'll also chew on the gravel in her exhibit. Whereas Spot got her name because she has this pinkish spot on the back of her neck. So not the most original name, but You can also tell our two turtles apart based on their behavior. So Chewy is more of an athlete. She spends a lot of her time swimming around this exhibit, whereas Spot behaves more like a jellyfish. She prefers to expend very little energy and just float in this exhibit. She can also be found sleeping a lot throughout the day, whereas Chewy, like I mentioned, she's swimming around this exhibit. She's very, very active for a turtle. So our green turtles are omnivores. They get fed a variety of things, including some small species of fish. They do get a lot of veggies. Normally, when green sea turtles are young, they'll have more of a carnivorous diet, and then as they get a little bit older, they will switch to being more vegetarian, where they'll eat lots of seagrass. So we give them a lot of leafy greens here. But our green sea turtles are also fairly young. They're only in their mid-20s, whereas green sea turtles' lifespan is usually around 80 years old. So Spot and Chewy will probably be with us for a very, very long time. And green sea turtles actually get their name not by the color of their shell, which is more of a brownish, but by the color of their fat deposits as they get older. So because they start to feed on lots of seagrass, it's actually that seagrass that tends to cause their fat to turn green. Thus the name of a green sea turtle. Our green sea turtles don't actually have any teeth. They have serrated ridges on their jaw or their beak that are used to crush and shred their food. Additionally, one amazing feature of our sea turtles is that they can hold their breath for a really, really long time. We're talking hours. And they do this normally when they're resting because they can actually reduce their heart rate to a whopping 1 beat every 9 minutes. So these turtles can rest for a really, really long time. Whereas when they are expending lots of energy, say if they're diving or they're foraging, they need to surface more often just because they're powering their muscles more frequently. So their muscles do need energy and oxygen. So they do obviously breathe air. Now, Spot and Chewy have been with us for our entire time that we've been open. They originally came from us from a turtle farm. So a place that actually produces turtles for human consumption. So we did rescue them from that turtle farm. They were housed in a few places throughout Canada while we were being built before they finally came to settle in their new home here with us. And green sea turtles are also listed as endangered with the IUCN. They have several major threats to them, one of which being human consumption. So as I mentioned, Spot and Chewy were originally produced from a farm for humans to eat, and we were able to take them. So humans actually do eat turtles. They eat their eggs. Oh, here's Spot. So here is Spot, the other green sea turtle. Like I said, she behaves more like a jellyfish, so she's usually a little bit slower. In addition to us eating their eggs, we also use their shells in jewelry and for some other things like that, some more utensils. Another big threat to sea turtles is plastic pollution. This is clear evidence that turtles will eat just about anything. As well, recent scientific studies have come out to say that plastic, when it's out in the ocean, actually smells really good to turtles, so they do mistake it for something that might be more appetizing. And some juvenile sea turtles also tend to feed on jellyfish. So you can imagine a jellyfish floating in the ocean would look very similar to a plastic bag floating out in the ocean. And they might mistakenly ingest it, in which case it actually blocks their digestive system. So it makes them think that they're full all the time and they don't actually eat anything else, so they end up starving. In addition to that, obviously they can get caught up in fishing nets, and turtles will return to their native habitats in order to spawn. So they go to the same place every time they're going to reproduce in order to lay their eggs. And a lot of those places are being degraded by coastal development, unfortunately. So our turtles have several threats right now. The other one that I want to mention in this tank is our green sawfish. I will try and find them. We only have 2 green sawfish in this tank. We are fortunate enough to have a male and a female, but they do spend a lot of their time actually sleeping on the top of the tunnel. So I've got my colleague ran back down here and she's gonna help me try and find exactly where they're hiding right now to show you what I mean when I'm talking about a green sawfish. If you've been to the aquarium before, you may have seen them resting on the top of the tunnel. They are distinguished by their large saw, which basically is a essentially what you would think of as a nose. So I think they're actually on the other side of this exhibit. Our female sawfish here is actually the largest animal at the entire aquarium. Sawfish in general can reach about 23 feet in length, which is longer than a great white shark, so they can get very, very large. And the vast majority of their body is taken up by that saw, that part at the front. It's actually called a rostrum, which resembles basically a chainsaw. There are 5 different species of sawfish in the entire world. They're relatives of rays and sharks, so they also fit into that elasmobranch classification. And contrary to sharks, our rays and our sawfish tend to have very flat teeth. And these are designed more to crush and grind their prey together because they tend to feed on crustaceans and shellfish and things that would have a hard exoskeleton around their body. So you can imagine if they had very sharp pointed teeth and they tried to bite down on something that had a hard exoskeleton, it would cause their teeth to just break. So they have teeth that actually are very similar to the molars in our mouth. So those teeth at the very, very back that are very, very flat. However, similar to sharks, our stingrays and our sawfish do have that constant conveyor belt of replacing teeth if they tend to fall out. Sawfish generally live in shallow waters around Australia and the Indo-Pacific. This is where you can find the 4 other species of sawfish as well, so they all tend to live in the same environment. And the saw on our sawfish is called a rostrum. It has something called rostral teeth. Those are the pointed parts that line the outside of their rostrum or saw. And they use that organ in order to sense food. So it also has electro receptors in it, but they will also use it to stun or impale their prey. And then their mouth is located on the bottom of their body, so they'll just consume it that way, similar to a stingray again. Our green sawfish are currently listed as critically endangered, and in fact, all 5 species of sawfish are either endangered or critically endangered with the IUCN. They, again, are valuable for the parts of their body, their skin, their eggs, their rostrum especially. They easily get entangled in fishing nets, and like our sharks, they also have a very slow reproductive rate. Here's a great view of some of our. I want to leave you with the message that even small actions that you can do at home right now, whether it be reducing your plastic consumption or reducing your carbon footprint, can have a very big impact for the animals that I've introduced you to today. Spot and Chewy, the sharks, the sawfish, the stingray, everything you've seen. If you do want to check out more of what's going on at the aquarium while we are closed, we have live cameras up on our website that you can tune into. We also have Facebook Lives that we do several times a week, as well as a Ripley's Aquarium at Home page where there are lots of activities that can keep you busy when you're trying to find something to do at home. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something about the animals in this exhibit. Please stay safe out there, everyone, and we hope to see you soon.